you had a question?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, to all my graceful audience, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Rahmat Empowerment Wala, striving to achieve self sustainability for me and for the people alike. I'm host of this podcast named Empowering Minds. The objective of this podcast is to call upon such honorable and prestigious guests who haven't just explored their own mindset but are trying to empower other minds too. To serve the purpose, we have with us today Paul Bowen. He lives in Cincinnati city of Ohio in United States. He's 78 years young, having a degree in philosophy. He has spent most of his professional life teaching philosophy at the university level. Most recently, has been teaching in the Schilling School for Gifted Children. Wow, what a man he is! Let's welcome Paul Bowen with sheer enthusiasm. Hello, Paul. Welcome to Empowering Minds.
Hello. Glad to be here.
How are you, Paul, today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing very well, thank you. I hope you also are doing well.
I'm great, thanks. Thank you for your precious time you have given to me and your presence you have shown here to let us, get more knowledge from the experience you have. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to this session.
Good. Me too.
Great. So, how's life going at the moment? What are your current activities, Paul?
Well, I'm on leave right now, so I'm not actually working. So I spend my time reading, posting things on Facebook, uh, playing music, and of course doing things around the house and that sort of thing. Um, that's mostly what I'm up to these days.
Great, great. So, what kind of music do you play music or do you listen music?
I do both. I play the piano and the electric guitar, and I sing. I'm in a choir. I sing in a choir, and my favorite music tends to be early 20th century European art music. I like Debussy, Stravinsky, Berg, that sort of thing. The early modern music, and I I generally improvise when I play rather than doing a piece. Um, and that's roughly the style in which I would improvise.
Okay. So, you put your personal creativity in the music too.
That's right. Yes, I'm just making it up as I go along. Um, I, I do it for my own satisfaction. It doesn't earn me any money or anything. But I just love to make music. That's what it is.
Okay. Generally, I'm very curious to know about different places of the world. So, tell me about the city you are living in. How's that place? Where it is located? The visiting places of it, the weather, how's the infrastructure?
Well, Cincinnati is a fairly large city. It's in southeastern Ohio. Ohio is one of the states of the United States. It's what we call a Midwestern state because it's kind of in the middle and towards the north of the United States. So it has a temperate climate. And so Cincinnati, um, it's well, they have various industries and things like that, and some activity in the arts and sciences, and it's the site of the University of Cincinnati, where I taught for a while. I'm not teaching there now, but for many years, I taught philosophy at the University of Cincinnati. And it's located on the Ohio River, which is probably the reason why it came to exist in the first place, because people could ship things up the river. And that's not so important now that we have trucks and trains and airplanes. It's
True.
not so important to carry things up rivers. But that was, I think, its original reason for existing.
Okay. So, any famous visiting places tourists must visit?
Um, well, we have a train station uh, that it was done in what's called an Art Deco style. When it was
Oh,
originally made, it's fairly old, and now Art Deco is out of fashion, but it's pretty good looking. And it has murals. It has interesting murals that were made many years ago, and I think in around the time of the Depression, I think, and or soon after, and so that might be worth looking at. That's the only thing that comes to mind at the moment.
okay. So that must give an ancient or classic type look and feeling if someone visit that station.
Well, it was a particular fashion that came in early middle 20th century, um, and it's now out of fashion. But you see a lot of it. It was very influential, um, and I think it's a nice style. It's a good looking style, and I like the murals because of their message. They show, well, you can look at it two ways, but they show sort of the history of the United States from the point of view of the European people who came there, and
Okay.
how gradually they built up first agriculture and then industry in cities. And so, and it does it from the point of view of the working people, the people who actually did the work. So you see examples of people doing various kinds of work. And I like that about it, that it's kind of a history of ordinary people instead of a history of famous politicians or celebrities or something like that. I much prefer to see the history of ordinary people who actually did the work of what was done. Uh,
Sure. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, Paul, take us to your educational age. Why did you choose philosophy, not engineering or medicine? I'm trying to go deep here to understand why you have been so fond of philosophy.
well, I think there were a number of reasons. Of course, I was very young, and sometimes young people behave impulsively. So I don't have maybe a strong argument. Maybe I should have taken something else. I'm interested in other things. I'm interested in mathematics and science and other things besides philosophy. But I think I went to philosophy. Uh, well, my main reason is just that that's the questions I'm interested in. They ask the questions that I'm interested in, and and for example, ethical questions. And uh, you might be very clever as an engineer, or we humanity might is very clever in terms of engineering and doing things. But if you lie on your deathbed, you want to look at your life and say, yes, what I did was good. So the question is, what is the good life? Okay. And that's one of the basic questions of the part of philosophy that we call ethics, is what is the good life? What kind of life should one lead? And people have given various different answers to this question, but it's essentially a philosophical question. It's not an engineering question. It's not a mathematical question, but it's a very important question. It might be the most important question of all, because if you get that wrong, then you might have do a wonderful job of being an engineer or a scientist or something like that, but it might be you might regret it. Like you know, you might design an atomic bomb and it would kill lots of people, and afterwards you would think, "Hmm, maybe I wish I hadn't done that." So ethics intrigued me. And also other aspects of philosophy intrigued me. Logic intrigued me. My dissertation was about logic. And the branch of philosophy that's called epistemology, which sort of asks the question, how do we get knowledge? Or do we? you know, I think we do, yes. And the question is, how do we get this knowledge? And that becomes relevant when people disagree about something and you say, well, what's your evidence for this? What's your evidence for your position? What's the evidence for your position? How do we, you can believe something, but do you really know it? So the question is, what does it take to really know something as opposed to just having an opinion? I mean, everybody has an opinion about all kinds of things, but whether they have knowledge, well, that's another question. So, what is knowledge? So this is what epistemology asks: is what is knowledge, and I mean, how much knowledge can we expect to get? Are there some things that we can never know? And questions like this. So that interested me a great deal, and so I think it's because these were the questions that interested me in the end. I wasn't looking to make lots of money with my degree or to become famous or anything like that. I just wanted to work on these problems. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction just to think about these things. And that's the way my brain is built, I guess. So in that sense, I have not regretted going into philosophy. And I still consider myself to be a philosopher. I mean, I don't have a job as a philosopher anymore, but I still think about these questions. I'm still very interested in these questions. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm a philosopher, even though I'm not getting a salary for it. But I still do it, and I probably will continue to do it.
Great, of course. I guess it's in your blood. So much years you have, your life you have given in this. So I guess it can be, separated from you.
I think that's true. I think that's true. It would be very surprising to me if I suddenly decided, oh, this isn't interesting. I mean, maybe I will. I try to be open-minded. Uh, Maybe I'll wake up one morning and think, I made a terrible mistake. I should have gone into math. Because I do love math. But I didn't specialize in that. Every now and then I teach myself a little more math. Um, because I like math. But in the end, I think all by itself, math doesn't interest me as much as philosophy does.
Okay. Thank you, Javed Malik, for your presence and your comment. I appreciate.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
so, Paul, tell me, the philosophers usually write long books and thick books. So, do you write books, or have you written any book?
No, I wrote my PhD dissertation, which was a kind of a book, but it's never been published. I spent most of my academic career teaching instead of writing things. And now I'm writing more. Uh, but because I'm not connected with any university, it's I'm not getting. I don't know how I can get it published. You see, um, and so what I do is I've written a lot of things, and I put them on Facebook. So Facebook has some advantages. People from all over the world can see it. It doesn't cost anything. Um, and so I'm actually using Facebook as a way to reach people instead of publishing books. and it has its disadvantages. But at the moment, it seems to be actually the most. I'm getting more. I'm getting the most satisfaction out of it, and if nothing else, it's helping me to clarify my own ideas. You see, if you have to explain yourself to somebody else, you may not realize your ideas are not so clear. But when you explain it to somebody else, then you say, oh, wait a minute. That wasn't very clear. Or they may tell you, they may say, what? I don't understand. So, and I'm very interested in explaining things to people who don't have degrees in philosophy. You see,
Great.
everything I write now, I write for a person who's literate and has some sort of general education, but they don't have to know what Aristotle said or what this or that philosopher said before. I just try to express myself in a way that anybody can understand. I'm not trying to show off how much I know about philosophy from the past. I'm just trying to say, here's the best I can come up with as an answer to these very important questions, and I'm going to try to express it in a way that you don't need technical knowledge of philosophy to understand. So in this, I admire Bertrand Russell, the philosopher Bertrand Russell. He wrote some very technical books that very few people can understand, but he also wrote popular books that anybody can understand. And and I think what he, I admire him that he wrote these books. He was trying to reach ordinary people with these books instead of talking to other people who are academics. The academics can talk to each other, and it sort of stops there because nobody else can understand what they're saying, right?
True, true.
But I think philosophy needs to get out there. These are very important questions, and they should be expressed in a way that anyone can understand. So my
Great.
teaching taught me how to express myself because I could see, are the students sitting there looking very puzzled, or are they nodding? So I know whether, and when I give them an exam, then I really find out whether they understood. Right? So, but these were not very, most of my students are not very advanced. And of course, when I'm teaching high school, then absolutely. And many of them have never heard of philosophy.
True.
Uh, so I also teach other things in high school. I teach some math and physics courses, but it's interesting to have to explain yourself to someone who hasn't even been to college yet. Uh, so I think that's a very important challenge to write and speak in this way.
So, have you considered about writing ebooks and publish it Amazon Kindle and online platforms?
Yes, I have. And I think I may gather together some of the stuff from my Facebook posts and turn them into a book.
Hmm.
And actually, many years ago, I published an ebook, but it's a novel.
Okay.
But it's actually philosophical. Some novels are philosophical. They're what people call novels, a novel of ideas. So uh, the purpose of the novel is to express some ideas and maybe get the reader to think about these things. So it's sort of philosophy in disguise. You know, oh, here's
Uh,
a novel. It's very exciting. We have sword fights, magic and all this stuff. But the real point of the novel is that it's a novel of ideas, and so I did that. But I'm thinking that soon I'll be able to take together a lot of the things that I've written on Facebook and publish them as an ebook. Yes, and that would be terrific because anyone when I publish my novel, I didn't. It's free. So if you get it from the original source, you don't have to pay anything to get it. See,
Great.
I'm not trying to make money off it. I just want it to be available to people. And
Okay.
Amazon wouldn't let me do that. They'd say it has to be at least 99 cents. So I thought, okay, 99 cents. But the Smashwords let me put it for free. So I think I would do the same thing with my philosophical ebook. I will just make it for free. And
Why free? You can earn an handsome amount if people buy your books.
well, I think yes, yes. Well, I don't know if they would, of course, see, because there's a marketing problem. You see, I mean,
Okay.
how people it's uh, if I publish a book through a publisher, they will take care of the marketing. But when I just publish my own ebook, then how do I let people know about it? See, I haven't the faintest idea of how to market something.
For
I
that,
just
you will hire a digital marketer for that, I guess.
well, you I don't have that knowledge, and uh, if you'd be interested in marketing my book when I if I ever write it, then maybe that could be done. But there's another thing also, and that is I think we in the world we are too motivated by money.
True.
You see, people should do things because they love doing them, because it's worth doing. Okay, as soon as you do something for money. Well, if you're very lucky, some people are very lucky, they get paid for the things that they would love to do. But not everyone is that lucky. And so I would like to see a society where people's basic needs are taken care of without their having to spend money, which they earn by doing something they dislike. Um, but we have the resources of the world. Let's use them to make people flourish. Okay.
Great.
And and that's what we should be doing. And market forces don't always do that. Market forces tend to make some people very rich and other people very poor, right? And
Yeah.
there are other problems with market forces. So I'd like to stay out of the market. I don't want that. So it's a difficult question because by marketing the money isn't important to me. I'm not starving to death or anything, but maybe that would be the way it would reach more people. So that would motivate me to
True.
market it in some way. But at the same time, I would sort of like to say I'm doing this because it's worthwhile. I think it's worthwhile, and I'm giving an example. This is what we call direct action. You know, if you want to change the world, one way to change the world. Gandhi said this. He said, act as if it were already changed. Act the way you want people to act in the future. And if everybody does this, we'd be in the future.
True.
You see? So if I act like this and I say, I'm just going to give my book out for free, and other people do the same thing, and if enough people do this, then things will be different. Then things will be
Right.
different. And we can save ourselves the trouble of having some terrible bloody revolution and war and all this stuff that some people think is necessary to change the world. You know, I don't think violence just makes the world worse. What we just need to do is to say, we don't want to act like this anymore. We're not going to act like this anymore. We're going to act like this. And you know, maybe gradually, maybe change things gradually until it is the way we want it to be. But you know, shooting people doesn't make the world better. It makes
No, definitely not.
So I don't hold with those people who think, yes, we'll blow things up and shoot people and then things will be wonderful. No, they'll be terrible if you do that. And so I'm for nonviolent ways of changing the world. Uh,
Great. Okay.
so
So
I
all
think there's a nonviolent way maybe to change the world.
we hope so, definitely. So the topic of our podcast is one is flourishing. So, in your perspective, how would you define flourishing, and what are the key factors that contribute to flourishing in both personal and professional contexts? We are talking, if we talk about.
Well, I have long ways of defining it and short ways. So I'll do the short way because this is an interview, not a book, right?
Right.
But
Okay.
the short way is this: people flourish insofar as they are able to use their talents to do something that's meaningful to them, meaning they're successful at it. Okay. So it's not enough just to be happy. Uh, I mean, we could put electrodes into somebody's brain and they would be wonderfully happy, right? But they're not accomplishing anything. It's a kind of illusion, right?
True.
So to really flourish, people have to go out and work on the world and make it what seems to them to be a better place. So flourishing requires, the development of skills and learning things and doing things. It's like in the Cincinnati train station I was telling you about. It's pictures of people who are actually doing things. So I think people are flourishing when they are using their talents and actually accomplishing things with them, meaningful things. Uh, there's a legend of Sisyphus who rolls a stone up the hill and then it rolls back down. He rolls it back up and he rolls it back down. This is not flourishing. He's not accomplishing anything. Okay. But now, if he invents a cure for cancer, I mean, that's an extreme case, but let's say he invents a cure for cancer, he's really done something good. So, um, so flourishing is this really very complicated thing that that involves working in the world, influencing the world, and you get some points for trying. Maybe a person just has terrible luck and doesn't achieve what he wanted to achieve. But I would say a person who's trying and who's doing a good job of trying that's a very high level of flourishing, even if if they have bad luck. Then that really is not terribly important. Luck is not flourishing is not about whether you have good luck or not. So that's basically my idea of what flourishing is. And then my social philosophy is society ought to see to it that everybody flourishes as much as possible, with the proviso that everybody flourishes about the same amount. See, I don't want a society where some people are flourishing like crazy and then lots of other people they are not flourishing. Everybody should be flourishing by about the same amount. So I call that egalitarian flourishing because they're equal. And also that this should be over time. And if you just had one huge spasm of flourishing, but then after that everybody was dead, that doesn't count. It has to be something that lasts. Okay. So this is what society. You used the term sustainable before, so I'm talking about sustainable flourishing. So,
Right.
so, so sustainable egalitarian flourishing. That's what society should be aiming for. That's how we should use our resources. We should develop skills so that we can do this. And we should organize society in such a way that we do that. That's our goal. according to me. Anyone may disagree. I could be wrong, but that's what I think today.
Great
Maybe, maybe tomorrow I'll wake up in the morning and say, "Oh no, what a terrible mistake." It's not that at all. But right at this moment, as far as I can see, that's the best thing.
great explanation, Paul. Okay, tell me, how do you think individuals and communities can better nurture an environment where flourishing is possible for everyone, like you said, not just for limited people?
Hmm. Well, I think democracy is important because democracy gives people control over their lives. So it's not just one person who's changing the world, and they are all puppets doing what he says. But people should have control over their lives, and democracy is one way that that gives them control. And for the same reason, freedom is very important because if I tell you exactly what to do, and maybe what you do has a good effect, but you're not flourishing because you're not doing it yourself. You're just doing what I tell you. So I think it's very important to have freedom. So you should make a social structure that's democratic, a social structure that allows a lot of freedom. And I also talk about meaningful freedom. You see, suppose I say, look, I have 1 billion grains of sand here. You can choose any one you want. Wow, what tremendous freedom. You have 1 billion choices, but it's not meaningful freedom. Who cares which? You don't care which grain of sand. What are you going to do with the grain of sand? So freedom has to have opportunity. Okay, society has to provide opportunities for people to flourish and let them choose how they're going to go, which opportunity they're going to take, and how good about it. And also, when I'm talking about democracy, I like to talk about what I call radical democracy. Okay, so let's say in the United States today, people get to vote for their mayor, their senator, their president. But when they go to work, they're working in a very authoritarian situation. The boss says, do this, you have to do it. So there's no democracy in a corporation, or very little. There's some democracy with the shareholders. But as for the workers, they're not, they're spending a very large chunk of their lives in an authoritarian situation where they have no power. So what some people have advocated is that the workers in the factory should decide what happens in the factory. Okay, they should vote. That should be a democracy. Okay, and so what I mean by radical democracy is whenever you have an organization, that organization is structured democratically. Okay. Now, in a democracy, you could say, well, if there's an emergency, we're going to name this one person. Okay, and if there's an emergency, this person will be in charge and he'll be the boss because we won't have time to vote. Okay, that's fine. But you have to vote that in advance to choose this particular person and so on. And so that's what I mean by radical democracy, that not only politics, but any organization has to be democratically structured. Um, so democracy, freedom, opportunity, these are things society should provide. I mean, I think the basics of life people should provide. Everybody should get medical care, the medical
True.
care that they need. It shouldn't be that rich people can go off and have a facelift or something, while a poor person can't get something that really would save their lives. Okay,
True.
so everybody gets basic medical care because how can you flourish if you're sick? Right? you have
Yep.
to you have to be healthy to really flourish. I mean, if you have a strong will, you can. There are many people in history who have been sick, but they've accomplished a great deal. But for the most part, health is a basic, fundamental part of flourishing. So,
Absolutely.
So people shouldn't have to be worrying about where their next meal is going to be coming from, and stuff like this. That how can they flourish? I mean, imagine some famous guy, Beethoven, the composer. If he was too worried all the time about where his next meal is come from, he's not going to write any music. Uh, right? And so society should take care of people's basic needs. And the workplace should be safe. Well, that might follow from democracy. I mean, once the workplace is organized by democracy, people are going to insist that it's going to be safe, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays, they have to go on strike. And that's a very wasteful process. Instead, they just vote. Look, this is unsafe here. We're going to change it. And why would they not vote to do that? Right? So this is going to happen. So everybody, basic education should be free. When I say free, I mean it should be provided. Um, and and of course, the whole culture should say yes, flourishing is good. We should have it. And So people in the arts should celebrate flourishing, and uh, people should celebrate it. So in this way, I mean, I don't want to tell the future exactly what to do. I don't want to micromanage them because then they're not free, right?
Yeah.
And besides, they're the ones on the spot. They know what's going on. I can only guess as to what will be true in 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So I'm not going to say exactly how it should be structured, but I think it should be democratic, and it should be a radical democracy, and it should be nonviolent. There shouldn't be a need for violence. I think we have a lot of violence in the United States today and other places, just because we're not focused on flourishing. So you have two different nations, they're competing with each other. And every now and then that becomes war. But even if it becomes war, sometimes rich nations will dominate poor nations. They may not have to use their military power to do so, although it's always there sitting in the background, right? You push us hard enough, we'll bomb you. So, uh, so the rich nations get to take the natural resources from the poor nations. So we have to not compete with each other. And that means, among other things, no separate nations. As soon as you have separate nations, then you're going to have this trouble. Because a nation does a nice job for the people inside the nation, if they have a good government, which of course doesn't always happen. But it's not so good for people in the other nations. They're competing with them. So I think we need a society that's not competitive. And that means this business of having different salaries for different jobs and stuff like that, that's going to make people compete. They have to know that society is going to take care of them just because they're human. Okay? And they don't have to worry about that. And they don't have to go out and do something they don't like doing. So we really have to build society in a cooperative way. And so that seems to me extremely, extremely important. So I think you shouldn't have separate nations. We should have one planet, one people, democracy, and all these other things at that level. As soon as you have these different nations, it's like in Palestine today, people are killing each other over this question. Well, who owns this land? Okay.
Yes.
And my answer is nobody owns the land. Humanity, or maybe humanity owns the land. Thing is, how can we use this land to make human beings flourish as much as possible. If you ask who does it
Right.
belong to, that's the wrong question. That question makes people fight with each other. Okay? So basically, nobody owns anything. We will collectively decide through democracy how we're going to use our resources. Okay? So we have these gods, like in the United States, we have these very rich people, and they own all this stuff, and it's just luxury. And to me, this makes no sense at all. Uh, and we have other people who are just struggling to get by. And here we are going, this guy, Jeff Bezos, he has a mansion and a home that's as big as a city. Okay. This makes no sense to me at all. This is insane. Okay. So we just need to satisfy people's basic needs, give them freedom to express themselves, to do things that they love to do, to raise their families, which is all that most people want. Very few people really want to go to war. It's just that they're squeezed into the situation,
True.
and they would rather stay home and do some useful work for the world rather than go out and try to kill other people. And we get manipulated into that because of nationalism and other kinds of competitive things. And it's hard for people to love each other. Wouldn't it be wonderful if people love each other? But if society is competitive, you're afraid of other people because they may be about to take your place, right? You're competing with them for something. They may get your job, right? So people in a competitive society, they don't realize they think life is a struggle with other people. The philosopher Sartre said, hell is other people. See, I say heaven is other people. But when you have a competitive society, yes, that's that people are suspicious of each other. They don't trust each other. They hide things from each other, right? Because they're worried about how it's going to turn out. So then if you expect people to love each other, well, that's asking a lot. That's
So, do
asking.
you think competition makes us, do what we don't want to do in order to flourish? The
That's
competition makes us do something productive for ourselves.
that's absolutely right. That's it. I agree completely. I agree completely. And in a non-competitive society, everybody would be your ally. You would know that if you fall on hard times, they will help you, and that they are happy when you achieve something. You know, People feel envy when they see somebody else succeeding because it means that they're not succeeding. Okay. Instead, you would see somebody succeeding, you would feel joy because their gain is not your loss. So that in a cooperative society, their gain would be your gain. Hold on a second.
No problem.
Okay, I just turned it off.
Thank you.
uh, so
Okay, you talked about Jeff Bezos, so wanted to ask a little bit. So we can say he was the right person at the right time. He started a venture which clicked, and he earned through smart work he did. So is it bad?
well, I think what makes people get rich like this, you often say these people. You hear people say he's created value, but actually it's the workers that created the value. Okay, and
Uh,
what people like Jeff Bezos are good at is figuring out a way to using private property structures. They are able to skim off the value of what other people have created. It's the people who work in the warehouses of Amazon and who put things in packages and send them to you. Those are the people who are creating the value. That's the way I see it. What people like Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs and people like this, what they are good at is finding a way to skim off the value that other people have created. Okay, so no, I don't think they're entitled to big rewards for this. Um, I admit that they're very talented, but I wish they would spend their talent in some other way. And if society is different, they would, because there wouldn't be a way to do that. In what I think is an ideal society, there is no way to skim, for one person to skim off the profit from what other people have done. And uh, so now I think there's an argument. I grant you there's an argument that says, well, if we didn't reward people for achieving things, then they would become lazy.
True.
Okay. So, but I don't think people are actually like that. I mean, they might be because society makes them that way, but people like to do things. You can have very poor people, but they will go out and volunteer to do something, and to help other people, or they'll make a hobby and work very hard on this hobby. Maybe somebody has a motorcycle and he takes care of his motorcycle, right? And so they like to do constructive work. People get depressed when they just sit in front of a TV and change channels. It's not good for them. They're not happy. That doesn't make them happy. I mean, I could live, I'm retired, I could retire. I could have retired long ago. I'm 79 years old. The usual age of retirement is around 65, 67 in the United States. I don't want to retire. I want to do something useful. But I wasn't forced to do that. I wouldn't have starved to death. I have Social Security. And my wife works. And so, but I went on teaching. And I think that there's also an issue of, well, let me tell you, there's a Christian group of people. I'm not trying to convert you to Christianity or anything. I'm just mentioning that there's a certain group of people who are Christian, a particular kind of Christian. And they work this way. They're mainly an agricultural people, okay, and they elect people to be managers, and the managers tell them, okay, we're going to plant this and we're going to harvest this and all that, and they do it, and then it's distributed evenly amongst everybody. Now, these people have been doing this for almost 500 years. And if it was true that having your living guaranteed makes you lazy, then these people would be lazy, but they're not. They're very industrious people. And part of this is, of course, peer group pressure. If somebody's not doing their part, the other people will disapprove. And there are other things that motivate people. They are nonviolent. If somebody does something that breaks a really important rule, they will ban them. That means they won't speak to them. They won't interact with them. Okay? But they will not harm them in any way except by completely ignoring them. So, and I think we can make this a little more sophisticated. There are degrees. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. But you can apply peer group pressure to somebody if they seem to be not working what you would consider to be a reasonable share. You can put pressure on them to do so, but it's still nonviolent. Um, and sometimes you have to isolate people if they're dangerous, and maybe that might require some violence. But I think there would be very little, very little. So these people, the Hutterites, they've been doing this for 5,000 years. They're also decentralized. They have groups of about 150 people, and when it gets to be more than that, they split into two separate groups. And there's no government. Of course, there's the government of the country they live in. A lot of them live in Canada and the North United States. But you see, they do all kinds of things that a lot of people would say human nature will not allow you to do that. They're nonviolent. They run their economy democratically. If they don't like a manager, they can unelect him. Uh, and so on. They are decentralized. They don't have this big, powerful government. So human nature is really very, very flexible. If you study anthropology, you see all these different people in the world who do, their societies are very, very different. And some of them are quite bizarre by our standards. And so humans are very flexible. If the society is built for a certain kind of behavior, that's what people will do. There was a society called the Moriori who had an absolute rule against killing. Unfortunately for them, there was another group called the Maori who didn't have this, and the Maori discovered the Moriori and they invaded them. And the Moriori wouldn't fight back. They would just try to run and hide. I'm not advocating this, but it's just an example of how whatever society inculcates in people, they will do that. They will do the most bizarre things. You know, there are headhunting societies. A young man is expected to go out and kill another young man from the other tribe, cut off his head, bring it back home and shrink it, and then hang it up to show off. And somebody said, look, I've got 5. So about half the young men die because the other tribe is doing the same thing. So to me, this is just absolutely bizarre, but their society says do it, so they do it. I don't know if they still exist, but they used to be like that. So anthropologists have this idea that's called ethnocentrism, which is that everybody believes that their way of running society is the natural way. You know, but if you really look at all this variety, you see, no, there is no natural way. What humans do is they create cultures. And that's very different from most animals. Animals have very little culture. They always behave the same way in the same situation. So I'm really still have what your question in mind. I've gone way far afield, but I still have your question in mind. Should we say we need Jeff Bezos because we need to make them rich because we need to motivate people to do this? And I say, no, you don't need to do that because the Hutterites don't have that. Everybody's equal. They are so strong on equality that they discourage people from learning a musical instrument because they're afraid that then other people will admire them and they'll have more prestige than other people. That's going a little far, according to me, but this is how they are very, very serious about equality. Okay, and this is a possibility. So if this is possible, then lots of other things are also possible. So no, we don't need to have Jeff Bezos and these other people having these fantastic riches. And of course, a lot of the stuff they produce is junk anyway. I mean, they're destroying our environment in order to make money, right? You were talking about sustainability. This is not sustainable. If you use profit as your basis for deciding what to do, then that's what you're going to do. You're going to go and destroy your environment and we'll all die. Not a good idea. Okay, well, I went off on quite a rant there, but I guess I've now come to an end.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me so much time. Even I didn't expect that we would stretch that much. Lastly, I would want you to, touch a, touch this subject a little bit. You're teaching in Schilling School for gifted children, because as a person with disability, I relate myself to the gifted children. So I would love to know a little bit from you. What inspired you to teach those children with special needs? And a supplementary question, that how we make people feel empathetic towards disabled persons more.
What was the second part of the question now? How would I?
How we make people feel more empathetic
Oh, gotcha.
towards person with disabilities
Uh,
more.
right. Well, gifted means more intelligent. So we're not dealing with all special needs. It's just one particular kind of special needs. So you have to have, in order to get into the Schilling School, you have to have an IQ of 132 or higher. So that's the basic requirement. And so, um, but given that, okay, well, I think the reason I first became involved with them is because of my own children. Now, I live in a place where they have good schools. That's why we moved there. You know, when we came into the Cincinnati area, the first thing we did was to look at all the schools and say who has a good school, because in our value system, education is very, very important. So, so we did, but we found that there were some problems, and our kids were not flourishing in these schools. So, in the public schools, so we thought, well, we need a private school for them, and so we found out about this school, which had just been formed, the Schilling School. And so we said, okay, let's try sending our kids there. And then it turned out that we could make a deal. If I taught there and if my wife taught there, we would get a cut in tuition equal to the salary. Whereas if we got the salary, it would be taxed. So it was actually a pretty good deal. Um, well, that didn't last, but that particular deal didn't last. But then I guess then the school, the particular college, the University of Cincinnati where I was teaching has many different colleges, and they had this one which was called University College, and then they terminated it, so I had nothing to do. So then I said, okay, I'll teach more at the Schilling School. So that's essentially why I first got involved, was for my kids. I wanted to be able to send my kids there. But once I got to teaching now, of course, it was a huge adjustment for me because kids of that age are not like college students at all. I mean, with college students, they are disciplined. They come in, they may fall asleep, but they won't make trouble. So
Easy to handle.
yeah. So, but these younger kids, a lot of it is discipline, and I'm not good at discipline at all. You know, my attitude is you're responsible for yourself. If you want to learn something from me, this is what it's going to take. If you're not willing to do that, well, go away. You know, and I'm not a disciplinarian. I just want to teach them the subject. So I ended up in the high school courses where the kids are a little more disciplined, but able to control themselves. And so I found that I liked it. You know, I was talking before about doing something because you think it's worthwhile. And I said, yes, this is something worthwhile. Because gifted children do have trouble in public school. Um, For one thing, they're bored. And kids, when they're bored, they start acting up. And also, because they're smart, it's too easy for them. And so they don't develop methods because they can just see the answer. So you're trying to teach them this method, and but they don't think they need to learn the method because they can just see the answer. And there's something in what they say, but eventually you reach a point where you're going to have to use the method, right? And then they're not used to that idea of using a method. My wife, when she was teaching algebra, she would deliberately give them problems that they couldn't just see the answer to. So instead of saying 2x plus 3 is equal to 5, what's x? She would say 2.763 at times x plus minus pi over 45 equals some very long, complicated thing. So they couldn't do this in their heads. Even the gifted kids couldn't do this in their heads. They had to go through the method of solving the equation. So, but in public school, they they can coast by just because they can see the answer without having to learn the method, and they never learn it. Also, they have social problems because the other kids don't understand their sense of humor. You see, smart people have a different sense of humor. They have levels of irony, and subtlety of the humor. And so they're trying to crack a joke. The other kids, what? They don't see the joke. And they use this large vocabulary, and the other kids don't know this vocabulary. The gifted kids are using these words that the other kids don't understand. And then, of course, sometimes the other kids get resentful because the gifted kids are getting good grades. And and my niece had this problem in the school she was in, and she would deliberately get. We discovered her parents discovered at some point she was deliberately getting bad grades because she didn't want the other kids. The other kids were being resentful. Okay, so these are bad things that can happen to gifted students in the public schools. So I thought, all right, it's good. These
So I took this term in a wrong way that gifted children mean the disabled person, this disabled children. So you are talking about gifted children who have more IQ than other children.
Yes, yes, and
Okay.
so that has its problems.
So how can we determine these children that they are gifted?
Well, we give them an IQ test. I mean, for legal purposes, you have to have some very clear criteria. So we just say, okay, 130. They take the test. If they get over 130, then they're in. And okay, the number 130 is arbitrary, but you need. Otherwise, parents are going to complain. If you don't have a very strict, clear test. So then we we say, okay, it's good to be gifted. It shouldn't be a problem. And we find that they do. They relate to each other very well. That's part of the school, actually. The part of the appeal of the school, with all due respect to our wonderful teachers, uh, part of the appeal of the school is just that they have other kids who are also gifted. So these kids will laugh at their jokes, and be interested in the same things. And so, so, so I guess, did I understand your question right? That you were asking me how you would let them know they were gifted?
Yeah, you answered me that you have proper test and in government level too.
Yeah.
So in which age, we can determine that these children are gifted children?
Yes. They have high intelligence.
In which age we
Okay.
test them?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it would depend on the student. We teach kindergarten through 12th grade. So whenever, and the parents can bring the kid in anytime. So whatever age the kid is, they'll go test him then. When they decide they want maybe to get into the school, they test the kid then to see if they have this test.
Great. These are some new things I've learned from you. I didn't know that before.
That gifted means higher intelligence. Yeah.
I thought the gifted children means the person with, this is another term you use in United States for person with disabilities.
Yes, yes. No, it's not. I mean, you might consider it a disability. Sometimes I think intelligence is a disability because it you are surrounded by people who are not as intelligent, and sometimes that's a bit of a problem. But I wouldn't complain too much about it. I'd rather be. I'm not about to. If you say, "Here, take this pill and it will lower your IQ," I'll say, "No, thank you. No, it's I like
Like
it."
in the Sheldon Cooper character in The Big Bang Theory.
I yeah, I've seen only little bits of the Big Bang Theory, but yes, that's it. He has lots of social problems because he's different. Now he's also on the autism spectrum, what we call on the autism spectrum, what we used to call it. Oh, I forget what we used to call it, but he's somewhat autistic, and that's
OCD, the OCD,
uh
obsessive compulsive disorder.
oh, is that right? Is that right? I didn't realize he had that too. But to be autistic, people tend to think of that as a disorder. Uh, Many autistic people are very intelligent, but there's something else happening with them. And for example, they have a hard time interpreting facial expressions and subtle social cues and things like this. So that's actually problematic. Even if they're very intelligent, they also have this other problem. And I think that Sheldon on The Big Bang has, it's not just that he's more intelligent, but he has these other difficulties. Um,
Oh. He could understand sarcasm.
I'm sorry?
Sarcasm. He couldn't understand sarcasm.
Oh, he couldn't understand it. Yes, that's true. Of autistic people, they take you literally. Whatever you say, they will tend to take you literally. And I I sometimes think, well, why don't people just say what they mean? I can kind of sympathize. I can kind of sympathize with them. They're orderly. They're very orderly. What's wrong with that? You know, Um we tend to assume that everybody who's different, that there's something wrong with them, and I think no, just being different is not having a problem. Of course, in the old days, they used to use autistic people before computers. Autistic people could do computational problems that nobody else could do. So they wanted to make a table of trigonometric functions or logarithms. They would get an autistic person and they would fill out this table of logarithms just working in their head. And nowadays, of course, we have the computers to do that. So it no longer has the utility they used to have, which is kind of sad. But or maybe not, because that was always a rather limited way to exist, I think. Uh, but so yes, we consider giftedness not to be a disability at the school, really. I mean, it has problems. Gifted kids have problems in public school, but it's not because they're disabled. It's because the other kids don't understand.
Got it, got it. Thank you so much for letting me know this, and this new for me. And now I have learned this. Now I have known this. So I hope I won't forget that and keep that in my mind. The gifted children not usually mean a disabled person
That's
or disabled children.
So do you have more questions? Or
I I think I have taken many more time than I should have, and thank you so much, Paul, for your time and your patience to listen to me and the wonderful answers you have given me, and thank you for your presence you have shown here, and thank you for the pearls of wisdom you have shared with us. Thank you so much.
oh, you're welcome, and thank you for having me. I enjoyed myself, and the time, no problem. I have plenty of time.
Thank
Uh,
you so much, and I hope you have enjoyed this session like me as much as I did.
I enjoyed it very much. So flourish and be happy.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much.
All right, have a good one.
So, audience, that was Paul Bowen. You have listened to him, you have watched him, and I hope you have learned many new things. I have learned from him. I'll see you next time, next with the next guest. Till then, take care of yourself. Bye bye.